Chris, welcome. Thank you for coming. Welcome to my kitchen.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, I've got your present. I've left it in the fridge. Hold on a second. I've got to get it out.
I'll admire the kitchen for a moment.
I knew I forgot something. Now, Mark, because you know Mark well, he said you like chocolate. So I bought you some chocolate, and I went and I thought, I better buy you some expensive. I can't just buy you Cadbury's Dairy Milk or something.
Do you know I'd take that?
So I went to a shop. I'm going to just take this one out, and I bought you handmade chocolate.
Oh, yeah.
And I cannot believe the price of handmade chocolate, Chris. I don't want you to eat this now, and I don't want you to feel guilty about it.
You don't want me to eat it now?
No,
you just
no,
put it right in front of me.
Yeah, but I've got some chocolate for us to try. But so what it is £22.50, right, for 10.
Yes.
For 10 truffles, which are, I've got it written here,
Wow.
Marc de Champagne truffles, and they take the sediment left behind in the Marc de Champagne barrels,
Right.
and they
Tasty.
so they're charging £2 a chocolate. How can they get away with that?
I want to eat one now.
It's no. So what I did, because I thought I wanted you to take home and savour that, so I bought instead a bar of chocolate. I'm sorry this is really uncouth because I'm talking about money here whilst I'm talking about chocolate. So I said, I'll have a bar of chocolate so we can taste how good your chocolate is whilst we're doing the podcast.
Yes.
So I want that to stay as a present.
Okay, cool.
And so he said, yeah, you can have a bar. So I said, how much is the bar of chocolate? £6.80 for a bar of chocolate. But this is chili chocolate. So I thought, do you actually like chocolate?
Yeah.
Do you like dark?
I get anxious though about. Thank you very much about
dark chocolate,
expensive chocolate, because I eat it very quickly.
Yes,
and
that's the idea.
Like £6.80 and it's gone. You know.
There you go, £6.80, and
thank you very much.
I'm just gonna quickly try. This is chili in it, apparently. God, I kept that in the fridge. It's really too hard, isn't it? I can't actually.
No, you've got to keep it in the fridge then. No, it's nice.
Yeah. It's handmade, apparently, in the shop. All natural ingredients.
That's not necessarily a good thing. You need to know whose the hands are and where the hands have been.
That's a very good point. I didn't think about that at the time. Okay, let's go.
You can trust a machine. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly.
And all the lines are straight,
nice.
On the machine one.
It's got a nice little warmth to it. The chili's coming through.
Yeah, nice.
Do you like that?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
My voice is going to get much more sort of velvety.
Oh, that's nice,
now.
yeah, from the chocolate.
I'm going to start sounding like Reginald D. Hunter.
Right, let's talk about your book then, How Football Became What It Is Today. I must first of all say that I really enjoyed the book. It's got got great wit in it. It made me laugh all the way through. And you've talked about a subject that we all know and love and made it quite comical, but also very factual. There's so many good facts in here, and it's a thoroughly good read. What made you want to write it?
Well... Sorry, a bit of chocolate now. Well, there are a lot of football books out there that focus on one aspect of that, like one club story or one autobiography, one man's story, or the FIFA thing maybe that will go into sort of forensic detail about that, and those books don't. What I wanted to do was something that tried to just include all the things that I'd come across and thought about in the time that I've been watching football, rather than just focusing in great depth on something particular. So it's the sweep of it was what I wanted to do.
Yeah, basically it's a journey through your life as a football fan, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit, but it's not quite. I went to Derby away in 1986.
Yeah, no, it's none of that. It's not one like that. But it's talking about how England fared all the way through.
Yes, there's a lot about England. I mean, I'm the sort of football fan who, when you get into it as a child, and you look back at your life as an older man, as I am obviously now, you find that the World Cups are the staging points of your life. Every 4 years, and the things that happen to you stand in relation to that's how my mental calendar works. I left school after that World Cup, and then I went to, that one was while I was at university, and blah blah. And that's how looking back, my mental calendar works in World Cups.
So for people who don't know about you, you're an Oldham Athletic fan, but you're also a writer, and you wrote An Evening with Gary Lineker.
I wrote that, yes, with Arthur Smith in 91, and that was a very different sort of time for football, I think, when we wrote that, because it was a time when you couldn't really give away an idea about football. In the 1980s, football really, in terms of literature fiction or drama or anything. They were only interested in the theatre of hate aspect of it.
Yeah.
And films about the Millwall fans and the Firm, that thing.
Yeah.
And, it was like that was what football was. That was its identity in the lead up to Italia '90, let's say. It was all about the violence. It's all about the kettling and power hoses and all this, and electric fences and all of that.
Ken Bates
and then suddenly
Chelsea.
After Italia '90, so once we'd had that semi-final, where more people watched that than anything, I think, that didn't have Lady Diana in it. I think it was more people watched that semi-final, and it was like a big moment where people suddenly football was allowed again. Suddenly was allowed as a thing, as a cultural thing, and a lot of things started coming out when we did, and even Gary Lineker, it was at a time when it felt like there hadn't been anything that showed the sort of football fans that we were, that Arthur and I were, and Nick Hancock, who was with us at the time.
Arthur Smith, that is.
Arthur Smith, yeah. That showed the sort of football fans that we were. And so we wrote that about what we were doing on the night of the semi-final in a hotel room in Mallorca. That's where Arthur was, that's where I was, that's where Nick was. And Caroline Quentin, who was in the play, she was there also. And a couple of other friends of ours, Bob Mills, comedian Bob Mills.
Yeah.
And Sarah was Arthur's girlfriend at the time, and so we had a very similar setup to what we had in the play, and so and that came out just at the same time as things like Fever Pitch was at the same sort of time, and then after that, any number of other things. Because it felt like the wheel had turned, and you could write about being a football fan without feeling like a pariah.
Well, yeah, though I worked at the time, in 94, I think I was working at the Big Breakfast, and still every time I discussed football, I was treated like I was an outsider. The entertainment industry still hadn't embraced it. I did an OB where I went up to Old Trafford. I was producing. And with Richard Alford at the time, and we went up to Old Trafford, and they gave us a young David Beckham and a young Gary Neville around that sort of time, 95 or something.
To keep?
Yeah, to take home. But we could only do it if we went round the Manchester United Museum, which we kind of did. And I remember coming back, and the bosses just weren't impressed. They were like, "That's rubbish. Who cares about football?" And it's like, it was like no one cared about it. And then, but I know it had started changing. And then,
94 was there was 4-4-2 started, didn't it? Just after that World Cup. And it started to have a more sort of credible, grown-up coverage, rather than just Roy of the Rovers and.
Yeah. Can I just ask you about an evening with Gary Lineker? Because when I did some researching about it the other day, it seems that there's myriad amateur dramatic societies take it on and do it. There's pictures galore when you go into the photo galleries. Yeah. Are they still doing it?
I saw one last week.
Did you?
Yeah. I went to see it. I took my two sons, who were too young to remember when the play was out at first, and the oldest one's 23, and he's still too young for Italia '90, too young for and even Gary Lineker the first time around. I took my sons 23 and 17. And we watched an amateur production of it. It was pretty good. It's pretty good. And they had a little theatre near Barnet, in Fryan Barnet,
right? And
it was full. And my boys were laughing at it. It was great.
Do you get a few quid every time it's on?
You do, yeah. A few quid is literally what you get. Yeah.
It's interesting. You've got sons. Are they into football?
Well. Sort of, up to a point. I mean, it's one of the things that I write about in the book. Is one of the things that I if I was worried at all about the future of football, which half of me is.
Yeah.
What I would worry about is that the way it's gone in the last few years, and the explosion of football on Sky and on BT Sport now and on Amazon next season, and there's football on all the time, and that is going to kill the golden goose in a way, because the example in front of me of my own sons. My sons will come to an Oldham game with me for the day out.
Yeah.
But they're not really bothered one way or another.
Really?
They don't support anyone else, and they have, I bought them Oldham shirts when they were kids, just to try and ram that home. And, one of my sons went to the school playground, which is, we live in South London near Crystal Palace. No Crystal Palace shirts in the playground at all. It's all Arsenal or Man United or Chelsea. And John went to school in his Oldham shirt one day to play football, and he got put up against the wall. What's that?
Did he?
Oldham are
Oh,
not
brilliant.
a proper. He said, "There's Oldham." Said, "They're not a proper team."
No.
And John's thinking, "But I went to see them at the weekend. They look proper to me."
Yeah.
You know. But but my sons, you see, when I was the age that they've just gone through, when I was a teenager, you know, and football was on the television, you'd see Match of the Day, you'd see it on Sunday afternoon, you'd maybe see a European game on a Wednesday night in Sports Night with Coleman before he went away to the Athletics or something, you know. And the little bits of football, they were hard. They were little nuggets, and you cherished them, and you sought them out, and you never missed them. And now, if you miss it's on again. A live game is on. You really have to be very engaged in it to sit through the whole thing. You know, however much you love the game. And I think what's happening is there's a whole generation of people to whom, when we're all dead and football needs people still to be watching it, who are going to be not that bothered.
Brian Clough said famously that there's too much football on TV, it's going to kill it. Kind of didn't really. It made it grow even bigger. But I tried to get my daughters into it. They refuse. They just think it's ridiculous. They have no idea. They don't. But my friends' sons, and I'm sounding sexist here, and I hope I don't, but my friends' sons some of them have become so obsessed with football because there's so much access to it, that I think it could be in quite a healthy state.
Yeah, I think the access to it is paradoxically is the danger. I think there's just because it's just overkill, and it's not going to get smaller because there's so many so much of it's ongoing. It's like David Mitchell said, the football's going on and on forever and ever.
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to stop.
Yeah.
It's just that Sky are now paying 11 million quid for a game, and some of them 200,000 people are watching them. And any other thing you spent 11 million on, if you only got 200,000 watching, it'd be axed. But it's such a sort of a leader for their channels and their company that the wall to wallness of it is part of what they need to make it.
It's interesting that though, because the deal has. Sky seemed to. I've worked at Sky and I've worked at Sky Sports and BT Sports. Sky seemed to get the lion's share always of the football, and then they seem to get the best slots as well. And Sky have seen off ESPN and Setanta, potentially BT Sport, because I don't know how long they can run without getting any prime time football. Which
you have to wonder whether it's sustainable. But from Sky's point of view, they'll pay over the odds for the thing because it's so bound up in their their identity.
Though if they get a monopoly, then the prices will start coming down. Obviously, they're going to put the prices down. So I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, I don't know who else they could sell it to if they.
Well, they've said
someone else.
They've sold a package to Amazon
for next year. Yeah.
So it's getting quite confusing for the football fan, isn't it?
Well, there was a thing in the paper today, wasn't there, about how much it costs a year? It costs more than a season ticket at United to watch all the football that there is. If you know the pay channels that you have to get if you're going to watch it all. Obviously there are ways around these things.
What's interesting about What's interesting about your book is how important England is through it. And then in recent years, I've started thinking, is England as important as club football? That whole debate has been happening all our lives.
Yeah.
But until this World Cup was brilliant, by the way.
Yes.
But if you'd asked me last year before the World Cup, I'd have said England, the national team's just gone. No one cares.
Yes. Well, yeah. I don't think that's. I think that last summer showed that. If there's even the hint of something they can get behind, then everyone would get behind it.
Yeah.
People have been ground down by disappointments during by the Fabio Capello era and the era when apparently the shirt was too heavy and players, and you get used to players not playing how they play for their clubs when they play for England, kind of thing. But I think there's a great sort of under layer of enthusiasm and affection that will just once they give you something to enjoy, then everyone will be on that bandwagon.
What I loved about the World Cup is I tuned in being cynical and thinking, this will be nonsense and rubbish, and then after game one, I was like, I love this. and Mark will tell you, because I'd been sitting going, I don't care about the World Cup, and I just loved it. And why I thought I loved it was Mo Salah has to play for Egypt. He can't get a big move to France.
No.
So suddenly they're teams again,
yes.
and they're playing for their countries, and we're putting out our lot, and our lot seem to be playing well and seem to be enjoying themselves, and we've got Gareth Southgate in his waistcoat. We could all buy into it, and the song's back. 30 years of hurt, and all that. So.
How sweet that seems, doesn't it, now, the 30 years.
30 years of hurt,
what a small amount of hurt that seems.
That is, yeah. do you think, I actually wouldn't mind doing I've never done this before, but I wouldn't mind doing a little quick poll on my Twitter to see whether people think that that there is as much excitement about country. Do you think it still is versus club versus?
Well, I'm coming from a place where I don't support one of the big Premier League teams. And so for me, watching Premier League football, which I do, I watch a lot of Premier League football, but a big aspect of what
Your team was in the original Premier League,
was in the original, to their shame. But that very first Sky advert of all the players running out, Andy Ritchie was in that, in his old.
Really? Okay.
Oh yeah. But no, I watch from a neutral point of view, and obviously there are teams I want to do well and prefer to do badly. But
which are who? Which teams? Come on, let's get you aligned.
TBA. But but no, I mean, part of what you're watching it for is, as a neutral, is that guy going to play for England? Is that guy going to come through? You know, the guy that you've got at Chelsea now, that Bayern wants, Callum Hudson-Odoi.
Yeah.
You know, I'm more interested in watching him if he might play for England than an 18-year-old. From another country, you know, and then so it's not necessarily a xenophobical or a racist thing. It's just my interest in it is in how it feeds into England. You know, as a neutral, that's my interest in it. So I'm interested in, is Ross Barkley going to start playing a whole game ever?
Oh, it's the frustrating thing about being a Chelsea fan. And I say this and people don't believe me, and Chelsea fans will go, no, he's talking nonsense here. But I preferred it when we were rubbish. I didn't actually. I preferred
so
it.
Did I.
I preferred it when we had Hoddle from that era. It was good. I enjoyed the sort of 80s stuff, and Ken Bates and all that sort of stuff was quite amusing. You talk about it in your book.
Yes. Well, he was chairman of Oldham as well, Ken Bates. And we were his first club.
Really?
Yeah. When he was like had black hair and was just out of, what was he, construction? I think. I'm not sure. But he messed us up first.
Well, he did. Well, did he mess us up? I'm not sure. We had a lot of good times. So Hoddle, and then onto the Hullet and Vialli and all that sort of era. It was fantastic. But then when we started winning the league, we sort of turned into this Man United thing where we expect to win every week, and it's just not. I always think if England win the World Cup again, it'll be horrific for football, because we'll go, we've done it now. Because
well, there's a horrible the entitlement is horrible, isn't it? And with Manchester United fans for so many years, you'll read their comments or you'll speak to them if you're really unlucky, and and they'll say, we did this and we smashed you at this, and it wasn't you. It was a thing you watched. It doesn't make you better than me. You didn't do it. You couldn't do it, even though you're wearing the same shirt as those people.
But that's what my daughters say all the time. Why do you say we, Dad? And I go, because that's just it. That's
just the terminology.
What is the point of football then, Chris?
What is the point of football?
Yeah.
Well, there are a number of answers to that, aren't there? I mean, at the moment, it's kind of the bread and circuses thing, isn't it? At the moment, it's kind of the thing that's allowed to have the monstrous presence that it has, because it takes everyone's eye off everything else. And on a sort of single person level, the football is to take your eye off the other things that you're not enjoying quite so much in your life. And on a larger scale, the people in charge are happy to have that thing to put in front of people while they get on with screwing everything else up.
So I've spent a lot of time going, right, that's it. I'm done with football. Right, I've done it so often, and I remember this vividly. Like, right, that's it. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not watching it anymore. That's it. I've finished. And then I'll watch a Chelsea match, and Chelsea will score, it'll be a cup or last minute or something will happen and it'll be exciting, Spurs against Spurs or something. And I remember with my ex-girlfriend, I was running around the room going, yes. She goes, I thought you're done with it. And I said, I don't know why this happens to us. Why does it happen that?
But you're never done with it. It's got,
But the allegiance, you've got your allegiance, you're watching it, and then it's kind of weird that you end up. And I always say this as well, which is it's a common thing, but if I'm watching a football match on TV, it's very hard to stay neutral.
No, you have to want an outcome.
Very quickly, you pick a side.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's what you're doing. You're picking a side, whoever it is.
Yeah.
So that's what happens.
It's the same with almost anything, though, isn't it? It's, anything goes into that mindset. Any sport that you're watching, any political thing that you're watching, you want one side to. You're in favour of one side over another. On question time, you want that guy to kick that guy's ass. It's almost it's part of human nature as well, which it feeds, doesn't it? That's what football feeds in a writ large sort of way.
Yeah.
That desire to take a side, that desire to have to wish an outcome and see it happen.
The title of your book, How Football Became What It Is Today.
Well, that's the subtitle. On the Game is the title.
On the Game, yes, sorry.
Which is the reference to the oldest profession. Which isn't playing football.
How Football Became What It Is Today. Could it have been why football's broken? What were your thought processes?
Subtitles for books do tend to get written by committee. And have my original thought. I was saying, and when you're writing a thing, it's a tip. I can't remember who it was from, but when you work out what your book is, or what your play is, or what your script is, or the thing that you're writing, or your article, what it's about, the thing it's about, write that down on a piece of paper and put it where you can always see it while you're doing it. Yeah. And I knew right from the start what this was, and the subtitle which was changed.
Go on.
Was along the lines of, why everything that's changed in football since I was born has made it a little bit more shit. And it's difficult. I think you look at all the things that have changed, and on little levels and on little rule changes, drive me out of the wall, because they erode the game that I started with. Do you know what I mean? And every little bit of the aesthetic of it that they sell, drives me up the wall. To begin with, when they sold the space on the player's shirt, to advertising. That used to drive me up the wall. And now you get used to these things, and now fans will buy a replica shirt and complain if it's got last year's sponsor on it, and want the up to date. Want to be the up-to-date advertising hoarding that that they've sold your allegiance for, And now the thing that drives me up the wall now, that's only the last couple of years, are these hoardings that go along the touchline that move. These things drive me up the bloody wall.
Why?
And just you're watching a game, and suddenly the thing that's more vivid and moving more than, particularly when you're watching Oldham. Is a giant Continental tyre, and it's rolling along the touchline. And there was a thing on Match of the Day, not last weekend, the weekend before, where Bournemouth, it was at Bournemouth. Bournemouth scored a goal, and they cut to a shot of Eddie Howe celebrating this goal, and he was bent over and he was celebrating like this, like that. And as he did that, seemingly out of his trousers, ran a small dog.
Little dog, the dog.
And it ran away, and it was like he'd had the dog and been molesting it, and it had escaped. And I don't want to be thinking that while I'm watching Eddie Howe celebrating a goal. I'm sure Eddie Howe doesn't want to be thinking.
I don't mind all the commercialisation of the sport in that sense. I do think we've become customers rather than supporters over the years, and I am aware that I used to pay money and it went to the players. Now it won't even pay for their hair gel. The TV deals are what pays for everything. Yeah,
well, talking about Bournemouth, if you look at the figures last year, where what their income was and their turnover was, they got 91% of their income from the TV and 4% through the gate. So you as a customer, you're almost becoming irrelevant at that level. Almost. They're the extreme, I think, because their ground is small.
Yeah, it's interesting that with when I did Soccer M many years ago, you don't mention Soccer M in the book, by the way. What happens to that?
Now you see, I knew it was coming here, and I wrote this book a couple of months ago, and I was worried that I was going to be challenged on factual things that were no longer in the front of my brain. So I was reading it on the train, and I do mention Soccer M.
Do you?
Yes,
I missed that.
I
Where did you did you slag us off?
Probably.
Did you?
There is a mention of it somewhere.
No,
I can
I'm
find it
sure.
if you go to a long sponsored break, I'll find it.
I read the whole book, so I don't know where that was.
No, I think it was just a...
It talks about fancy football and all those. But
fancy football, yeah, it's there. Yeah. It's in the same place as that.
I'm not sure it is.
Yeah,
well, anyway,
it's where there's a bit about the Saturday afternoon thing, the Jeff Stelling and Phil Thompson, and those people gradually... years and years away now from playing, it's still the same guys. And Paul Merson can't pronounce anybody's name anymore.
Yeah,
there it's just after that.
That was all. Yeah, what do you say about us?
I think I say that, like Soccer Saturday, Soccer M has gone downhill since you left.
Oh, that's it. Thank you very much. But when we did Soccer M, it was funny because there was Leeds United decided to sponsor their ground, and they put Lurpak on all the steps. So as you were looking at it, it had Lurpak, and Neil, who worked with me, a clever guy, came and said, do you think health and safety should know they've got butter on their steps, right? So we wrote to the league, and we wrote to Leeds United demanding to know why they've got butter on their steps. They didn't get it.
But what are they advocating there? That people should butter their steps?
But it just amused me so much that.
Well, I've written about what Oldham did with the naming of their. It's naming the grounds.
Yeah, naming the grounds.
This is a thing you can't sell.
Yeah.
You can't sell this. But Oldham has been Boundary Park forever. For 100 years. Let's say forever is pitching a bit strong. But they did a deal a couple of years ago with Mike Ashley, the Newcastle fella. And the deal was he would put a Sports Direct shop in our new stand instead of our club shop, which pissed me off to start with. But so we had this Sports Direct shop in the stand, and the ground was renamed the sportsdirect.com Park. Okay, and all little letters except for the P in Park.
Right.
So sportsdirect.com Park.
Yeah.
And the reason for this was that whenever there was a match report on the computer, on the internet, that would be underlined and become a magic hyperlink to the Sports Direct website. And so the name of the ground was just to link to Sports Direct.
Sports Direct.
And that lasted maybe 2 years, I think. 2 or 3 years, maybe.
Yeah, the sport has changed dramatically. We should go through some of the reasons why it has, but it did get reinvented with the Taylor Report as one of the things. When the Taylor Report came back and said, I just wanted to mention quickly, by the way, I was with the guy yesterday who invented putting the clock on the football. His name's Paul. He'd stolen it off American sport, and he put the clock in the top corner.
Oh yeah,
and he said it went mad when they put the clock. He was reminding me. I sort of vaguely remember, and he said even the bosses at Sky were going, we can't do this. And the first one they did was Sky Blue, and every time there was a nice sky and the ball went up in the air, because it used to go up in the air years ago before tiki-taka and possession.
I watched League Two. It goes in the air all the time.
When it used to go up in the air, they used to lose the clock in the sky, and then people going, "Why will you keep losing the clock?
What time is it?"
Yeah. I don't know how long the match is left, and so then they changed it. But he said that the outrage of the idea of putting a clock on the football.
Yeah, no, it's funny to think that wasn't ever, it wasn't always there. But I remember it wasn't in Italia 90, because they put up, I don't know how long ago we're talking about, but I remember them putting up every 15 minutes they put up a clock, and that was when you knew, put up the score and a clock in the middle. Because I've seen those games many times, because we had the game on the TV when we were on stage doing the play.
Yeah, we
had the game on the TV because nothing took your eye like a football match.
Right.
And if you sat on we experimented with an empty TV and a green light bulb in it, so that it would roughly be the pitch kind of thing, and so it would shine the same sort of light on your face. But you wouldn't look at it. You don't look at it. You don't look at a green light bulb. Why do you talk? But what we wanted was people sat around while the game's on,
right?
And the only thing that took our eye, like the semi-final, was the semi-final. So we had the semi-final. So I've seen it 150 times.
Wow. Was it on a VHS then into a...
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So the Taylor Report came along and they said Allseater stadiums, and basically with the Sky money was around the same. You can get you can do the timeline for me. But with the Taylor Report coming through, it meant that everyone had a new stadium. They had a brand new sport. The fans were old and still doing wanker signs at the corner flags, which I still can't believe that they're doing. I mean, it's just ludicrous. I wrote an article about it once. It must have been 15 years ago or 10 years ago. I wrote an article about why can't the sport grow up? Why do we still have grown men doing wanker signs? And why do we still have the only sport where we've got footballers walking up to referees going, and you can see them on TV going, "Ref, you fucking wanker," and you're going, "Mate, you're on telly."
Yeah.
You don't see Federer walking up.
But mic one of those refs up and it will stop.
Yes,
Mic one up.
But why don't they do it?
Why don't they do it? Why don't they do it? They do it in rugby. You hear them talking in rugby to the referee, and it's yes sir, no sir, all this, and
they did it once, didn't they? With
Tony Adams.
You're cheat.
Yeah.
Who was it? Who was it? Who was the ref?
Tony Adams in it. I can't remember the ref. I just remember it was Tony Adams.
He was the old teacher. Oh, I want to say Ellery. Is that right?
David Ellery? Yeah, he's a teacher.
Was it him? Yeah. You're a cheat. You're a cheat. Yeah, that's why they don't mic them up, because the sport can't have it, because the players do it.
Mic them up and it will stop.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so it was a brand new sport, and then what came first, the Taylor Report or the Premier League money coming in? I can't remember.
About at the same time. But the Taylor Report was post Hillsborough, wasn't it? Which was 89. So it took 90, 91, 92 to come. So it was all a confluence of gentrification all at the same time, really.
So the TV money was the biggest change I think we've had.
Yeah,
is it?
It was 92.
Murdoch money.
At the start of the Premiership, it was all Premier League. It was all that.
Premiership.
Premier League started with, then Premiership, then Premier League again.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think.
I love the way you describe it all in the book. It's very funny. It's very funny.
If I could remember how I'd done it, then we could do it again.
Yeah, but no, it's great because when after the Premier League gone, what really amused me is suddenly we'll get back to the money because it's good, but suddenly the rewriting of all the records. Suddenly, after one season, someone's the highest scorer in the Premier League, and I love the fact you say Lineker's sitting there next to Shearer like he never scored a goal.
He did it just the match of the day last night, the one that was on last night. He was Lineker was grumbling about, of course, I never played in the Premiership.
Right.
Still, like he's the highest. Shearer's the highest scorer in the Premiership. But even Shearer scored like a couple of dozen goals before the Premiership started.
Right.
Even Shearer's figure, his monumental goal tally, should be even bigger.
But none of it
once
counts.
Once you do that, but once you allow that, then you have to put him up against Jimmy Greaves, who's like way ahead.
But then it does amuse me when you're up against a Liverpool fan. You go, you never won the Premier League. They've won so many top flight, to use that term, which you talk about in the book. They've won so many top flight championships, but never the Premier League. So
it's ridiculous.
I know.
And
so we got that over them.
It's like it used to be with Manchester United. You haven't won the first division since '68.
Yeah.
And they didn't. They never won it again. In fact,
yeah.
They won the Premier League when it started. So that ongoing thing. It's 50 years since Man United won the first division.
Right. Okay, that's good.
But that was always the joke that United would get. On Ron Atkinson and Dave Sexton and all those guys.
Yeah.
They'd be runners up. Or Ron Atkinson won his first 10 games one year. Or this is the year we're going to win the first division. And then they fell away. So they were always the joke thing that Liverpool have now topped and become.
I like the way then you discuss how the lower divisions, so we're talking, let's just go from old school, so you'd have Division 1 with Liverpool winning every year, then you'd have 2, 3, 4, and they decided, they then became the first division, and then there was the Premier League in the first division. Then they decided to...
there was a subsequent rebranding. Where the English football, the Football League, which is now the EFL, isn't it? Was the Football League still, I think, at the time. And it was rebranded by Brian Mawhinney, who's a Conservative politician who used to be the chairman of the Conservative Party. So clearly a man who knew his stuff. And it was like 10, 12 years after the Premier League, which had been the Premiership and then gone back to being the Premier League.
Yeah.
And then as part of the thing, it was Premier League, then 1, 2, 3. Then it was Premiership, 1, 2, 3. Then it was Premiership or Premier League Championship. They start the Championship now. And so what was Division 1 is now the Premier League.
Yeah.
What has been Division 1 for the last 10 years is now the Championship. And then the third division is now the first division, and it's a brain-meltingly useless thing to have done. Just useless. It does nothing for... It didn't do anything it was supposed to do. All it means is now you're talking, Aguero scores that goal for City against QPR.
Yeah.
There it is. That's the championship. Oh, no, not the championship. What is it? What is it they've done?
Yeah. Yeah, you talk about, you say then the word that everyone has to say top flight, and then they have to say second tier. And
tier now.
Yeah,
it's
we
tier.
have the tier. Second
We're now
tier,
in the
third
fourth tier, but we're in League Two. It's bizarre.
For a while on Soccer AM, the show that doesn't really get mentioned in your book, which is very important.
It does. It gets mentioned. It gets remembered very fondly. I think the other thing I said, I think I mentioned this to you the other day, Mark. I always felt like with Soccer AM that you were a guy who wanted to do a music program, and you'd always see your face half full. You think, oh, another bloody footballer to talk to. When are the bands coming on?
Hold on, no. The reality was we stopped very soon getting footballers. So to begin with, we'd have Rio Ferdinand come on, young West Ham players. We used to get loads of those and stuff like that. And I left Big Breakfast and I went, I can't believe I've got a football show. This is brilliant. Brought along my friend Andy.
No one can believe it.
Brought along my friend Andy Harris. We were the only two who talked on Big Breakfast about football, and the two of us would do it, and we absolutely loved it. And then after a while, started with Fergie never let us have a Man United player on. Then Gerard Houllier, people like her would say, we don't take football serious enough. Wenger joined it and said, no, you can't have it. So slowly all we were doing was getting Leicester City players on and Charlton Athletic players, literally. And it started, we was getting, and by the time...
Sometimes you could get ones that had played for Arsenal, though, if you were lucky.
Yes, exactly. And it got less and less and less. And also I was up against CD UK and all that, so I had to try and do something a bit different. So I just went... indie rock stars. They don't want them on and so I was getting, I don't know, Kasabian and Noel Gallagher and all that sort of stuff.
I remember sometimes they would come on and you go, so football, what football team do you support? And they go, I'm not really interested in football. Anyway, never mind, on we go.
Well, interestingly, I stopped asking them. I stopped asking them if I knew it. Yeah, because if I knew they didn't really like football, I'd go, just avoid the question and just talk to them about music. So it just became a culture thing, because I always thought football it's part of culture and
part of it. Shouldn't be the whole bloody thing.
Yeah, but everyone was just buying into it. Every celebrity wanted to be associated, apart from Brett Anderson from Suede, who didn't want to be associated with it, because I kept asking him to come on. But everybody else would say because they wanted the association with the football. It just
the association with association football, which is a phrase written by Brian Mawhinney, the former Conservative Party.
But it's the point you sort of make in your book. It got reinvented after Italia '90, and then with the Premier League, then everyone wanted a piece of it.
If you're a celebrity, then you have to have a football team. Otherwise, you're short of one of the appendages you need to get on. But it's interesting, isn't it, how controlling they are and how controlling they think they can be. The people in football. I used to do a radio show with Nick Hancock, my friend Nick Hancock. It was a Saturday afternoon thing every week, and it was, what would you say? It was irreverent.
Right.
Is the thing. And it went out on local radio stations in Piccadilly in Manchester was one. And we kept getting messages that the Piccadilly guy had gone to interview Ferguson after a match, and Ferguson had said, "Piccadilly, you've got that Nick Hancock on your station," and they'd go, "Yeah," and he wouldn't talk to them.
Wow,
and we had to keep saying, "Can you not do so many Manchester United jokes, because Ferguson won't talk to us."
Yeah, I imagine that could be true. I don't know, but I imagine it would be.
Yeah. And there was another time I was working for a company that wrote material for websites, for club websites, before the clubs realised that this was a money spinning thing, and they just farmed it out to a company that we did all of them. We did material that went across all of these. But I had to write some articles for the Manchester United website, and we got a complaint letter about a thing that I'd written one time, saying, "Can you not let this guy write for our website anymore?" And I just suggested that after David Beckham left, that maybe Luke Chadwick wouldn't sell quite so many pillowcases in the club shop. And they, kindly, it's true, because he wasn't playing quite so many games. He wasn't as high profile a player.
Football evolved so much in the years I did. So when I started soccer, it was '96, and it was still, I think it was still like, hey, let's get on telly, and then it started getting more and more controlled by the clubs and who could come on, and what could happen. The point I was going to make about soccer, we used to, because it got so confusing with all the tables changed all the time. For a while, we used to go Premier League. We used to have league tables: Premier League, Championship, League One, Division 4. We used to do that because I used to think it was funny, and Helen and I used to always say Division 4 haircuts and stuff. We kept the word Division 4 because we thought it was good, but then we got told we had to get rid of it.
Yeah, you see, I thought that was funny too until Oldham ended up in Division 4 when it became slightly less funny.
The one thing I think, actually, talking about why we're on television and stuff, that I was thinking a lot about where I think football's gone, and I have a strange relationship. I love football still, but it's a strange relationship. I just think football has taken itself too seriously now.
Yeah.
I wanted to once. I never got around to doing it. As Bill Shankly, Bill Shankly ruined football, because he was the one who said that great thing. You know, it's like people say life or death. It's more important than that. And I said people started taking that seriously. But then now I watch football. Doesn't seem to be any humour. Soccer Saturday, obviously, and the BT version of that there is, and bit like that. But when you actually watch the football now, it's just like the Mitchell and Webb thing. They're just going, it is so serious. Yes. No one's smiling anymore.
Football now, forever.
Yeah. In fairness, Lineker does it.
Yes.
And he has a laugh. But so much of the football is just like, it's so serious. It's Oldham versus Shrewsbury in the cup. It's important. It's like, oh, Christ Jesus, have a laugh with it a bit.
And I think as we, to go back to what you were just saying about Soccer AM and the radio thing that I did and the website things that I did, it's difficult. It's difficult because they're so po-faced. Because the people in charge of football clubs regard themselves so highly and as so importantly. You can't take there's not really a way of being an allowed fool, in the way that things are presented, because the price of pissing someone off is you get cut off from access.
And also, when you're working in someone like Sky, BT, whatever, you're always told it's the crown jewels. This is our crown jewels. And because it's running a business, as you're right, Sky Television's nothing without the football and those deals years ago.
Yeah.
So because
its entire model, isn't it, of penetration, for want of a better word. It's its entire. Because in '92 that was their choice, wasn't it? If they're going to get into people's homes, it's football or porn. And that was the binary choice that they had.
Was that a real choice they were doing? Was it? So I'd get called in often and say, Tim, you're going too far. Or I've had a chat with one of the clubs has phoned up, said we don't like that bit, like that bit, and it's fine because it's a business. But the more the money came in, the more they had more control over it, and then they wanted less. And it sort of, I don't think it's a bad way, because football was in a terrible state in the 80s with the Bradford Fire and the Hillsborough and the decrepit
it was out of date from a facilities point of view. Certainly.
Exactly, but it turned itself into sort of Disney, NFL type thing, where or the NBA, where it's like, no one criticise. We're not allowing it. This is it. This is the product. You take the product like this.
It's very po-faced, and it shouldn't be, because the experience of going to a football match is usually funny. There's usually some funny things happen in it. But it's very protected. It's very jealously protected.
Can we discuss because I learned so much reading your book about the about the TV deal, which is phenomenal. I had no idea how that panned out. I just reaped the benefits by getting a gig on Sky.
Well, the thing that amused me the most about it, when I was looking into it, was there's a documentary, and I think I think you can see it on YouTube actually, which is about the meetings that they had, the chairmen of the top 5 or 6 clubs, and mostly led by David Dean, the Arsenal guy, who's is a very nice fellow, very very smart and civilised. I've met him a couple of times. They went off and had these secret meetings with Greg Dyke about taking the football to ITV from the BBC, and out of that came the idea of a breakaway league, and which they would always threaten to get more money. So all the TV deals before this, in the 80s, they'd threatened to do a breakaway. We don't need to accept this level of money. We can form a breakaway league, and Match of the Day would go on in, and then they wouldn't. And they do that in Europe now as well. They're always doing that about the this 16-team breakaway league that we can have, and then we'll watch Manchester United Bayern Munich every week. And it's never going to happen. It's like a stupid man's idea of a negotiating tactic. We'll do this thing. It will never work. All right then. But so they had this meeting with Greg Dyke, and the idea was, out of this comes the Premier League. We're going to break away the top the 22. We only need 20. No, you have to have all 22, or they won't vote for it.
Right. Okay.
So, which is how Oldham ended up in it. But and so they had these secret meetings with Greg Dyke. They all agreed the Premier League, and then when it came down to it, the top 6 who'd been to dinner with Greg Dyke all voted to go to ITV, and the other 14, 16 all voted to go to Sky instead. So the guys who'd set up the breakaway didn't work the way that they wanted it to.
But there's amazing figures. I don't know. Hopefully I wrote them down, or I have to dig it through.
Well, I hope you did, because I wouldn't remember them off the top of my head.
Okay, the deal was 304 million. Is that right?
If that's what I wrote when I knew the answer, then yeah.
I'm gonna dig out your book, because the figures are phenomenal here.
They're kind of spread out, aren't they? Because Murdoch came in to blow everything away to begin with, so with a huge amount of money, and then after 5 years, I think it was 92 was the first one, and then 97 was the second one.
All right, these are your words. B Sky B were forking out almost an unbelievable 304 million. Where the previous deal had been with ITV for 44 million.
Yeah.
The one before that was 6 million.
Yes.
From 6 million to 44 to 304. Yeah. But Greg, I can't find the amount that Greg Dyke had come up with, because he came up with a sum, didn't he? But 304
but
blew
just
out
got
the
blown
water.
out of the water, because, as I say, that Sky needed it to get into homes, and ITV didn't need to do that because they were already there.
But they took a risk because. Sorry, what's that, Mark? Oh yeah. They when they did the Sky thing, Sky weren't that. People were doing articles about people who had satellite dishes on the side of their houses. Yes. There was newspaper articles. Look at the person with the satellite dish.
The reason why David Dean particularly wasn't keen on the Sky deal was they've offered so much money. But look at their accounts, look at their business model. We're never going to see this money. We're never going to get this money.
Yeah.
Because it looked like such a cowboy operation. And at the end of the 5 years that the deal ran, and they had got the money, it doubled or something, didn't it? It went to 600 and something million.
Yeah, I don't know how much it is now. It's phenomenal at the moment. Isn't it?
It's billions now.
Yeah.
But to begin with, Sky were bothered about merging with BSB, weren't they, as well, the square reel thing, and so they had to see that off, and they were. It's hard to quite remember what a sort of 2-bit outfit it was when this happened, and it was a huge punt. It was a huge punt to just make Sky work.
Yeah. The reason why Mark interrupted us just a minute ago is because we've got sponsors now, Chris.
Lovely.
It's paying for
more than not the chocolate people.
No, they're not sponsoring us. They should do, really, after that. Yeah, turn it around. Cooker is sponsoring us, so I'm just going to read a quick message. It's nice. It pays for Mark's train travel and his batteries and things. The podcast is sponsored by Cooker. This amazing patented invention delivers instantaneous 100 degrees boiling water plus hot, cold, and even filtered cold water, all from the kitchen tap, which is over there, Chris, which I showed you earlier.
I wouldn't want 100-degree water coming out.
Wow.
Is that?
Yeah, it's good.
Is that safe? Is that advisable?
You get 100-degree water coming out of a kettle. It's saving water, energy, money, and time, and far safer than a kettle.
Oh yeah. Okay. Now I see it.
No
I'm
kitchen.
Seeing it now.
No kitchen complete without its cooker, spelt Quooker. The tap that does it all. Visit cooker.co.uk for details. It's spelt Quooker. Have you got a cooker?
No.
Have you not got a hot tap?
I've got a cooker. I haven't got that. It's a handsome item.
Oh, it's beautiful. I love it. I'd make myself a brew every morning, just like that. Bam.
Yeah. I would scald myself on day one.
No,
sure.
it's do you know? You'd be fine. If you can use a kettle, you can use a cooker.
Yeah, no, I schooled myself on the kettle. So.
I had a meeting talking about finances. I remember sitting in a meeting once. You might think I'm an old hippie here, but I was sitting in. I always struggle with the finances in football a bit,
Yes.
and I started reading about how Chelsea at the time, we were winning the league and up competing in Champions League, and we were getting more money for winning the league, more money for winning the cups, more money because we were going through in the Champions League, and we were getting the lion's share of the TV deal money along with Man United and all the other big teams. So we were getting more money than everyone else, even though we had a Russian owner who was ploughing unbelievable amounts of money. You say a brilliant thing in your book where everyone just organises himself now in financial order, which just made me laugh so much.
It kind of is what happens, though.
It is, yeah.
And this is what the dream is now for a club where Oldham are. What the dream is not, let's find a hotshot 18-year-old striker, let's bring him on, have him for a couple of seasons and sell him to Man United. That's not the dream anymore. The dream is to be taken over by someone from Dubai or from China.
Right.
And sometimes, they're these sort of ham-fisted little businessmen who are running these little clubs. They get the Chinese, and there's a fantastic excitement at Oldham a couple of years ago when the owner/chairman turned up to a game with two Chinese guys, and they could have been from the chip shop, but he sat in the stand with two Chinese guys, and suddenly the rumours are just
brilliant.
We're going to be taken over by Beijing TV or something,
there.
And this is it. This is because we're just down the road from City, of course. We're taken over by Sheikh Mansour and have more money than everyone else. And you see where that gets you.
Yeah. Well, but I was when I was there. I was in this meeting, and I said to them, "Why I don't get it? Why doesn't everyone in the Premier League get paid exactly the same amount of money for competing, and also share out the money from the Champions League that all the big ones had won, and also the TV money? Why isn't that all shared equally?" Call me an old hippie.
No. Why isn't it?
Well, I'll tell you the answer. The answer was, why would they bother competing? And I went, what? No. The fans are here and they want to see them win the league. And that's what happens. It's like, no. It's a financial deal.
You don't compete to have the best bank balance. No fans are interested in what the bank balance is.
Well, this is where I disagree with you, because I got so fed up years ago when which is 96 had happened. I'd joined Soccer M, and then we'd moved on a few years. And I remember going to Stamford Bridge, and suddenly and you mention it in your book actually, everyone starts talking about the finances of the club. I'm like, well, exactly your point a minute ago. They're not talking about some striker. They're talking about how much we're going to pay for this guy and how much we're going to do, and all the. I'm like, who gives?
And,
no one used to give.
But it's always we. It's always
we.
we should buy. Michael Owen. It was the last time I spoke to anyone at Chelsea about it, but it was. It's always we, and how can you engage in? It's like, do you read the Financial Times?
Yeah.
Or do you read the back page of the paper? Do you want to know who won, or do you want, do you want to finish 7th rather than 8th because there's 2 million more prize money at the end of the season out of the Sky deal? Because that's how they do it.
Yeah.
Everyone gets a basic amount, and then there's performance amounts which go from 2 million at the bottom to 20 times 2 million at the top, to 38, 40 million, however it pans out, and which is a performance thing. But then there's also a facilities fee, which means that the people, the teams rather, that are on the television the most get the most money, which arguably, they should, but it does.
No, I don't. It's supposed to be a level playing field.
Yeah, it is supposed to be.
And they want people realise that the more money you get, the better players you can get.
Yeah.
So dish the money out equally.
It's
I don't understand why that can't be a.
I don't
thing.
either. No, it's not an old hippie thing, because I don't think of myself as one. But it doesn't make sense. And I think what didn't make sense also was all this money coming into the game all at once, and suddenly at that time it came in when the Premier League cut itself off from the rest. So there's no appreciable trickle down at all from this huge thing. But it's what they've bought, what Sky have bought, is football. They've bought football, and if they ignore the rest of football, then they're cutting themselves off from the thing that feeds it, from the thing that feeds the top division.
So I'm fascinated by that, because Sky do own football, yet BT Sport own European football, and you write a lot about the European Champions League and the champion. I'm a hypocrite. I change my mind constantly on football. I'm sure you do as well.
Yes,
and
I do, yeah.
And so originally I sort of like, no, it should just be for the old Nottingham Forest team winning the European Cup. That's all it should be, a cup competition. Then when you start seeing Chelsea or whoever playing against Barcelona, you think, this is quite interesting, isn't it? I quite like watching the best Spanish teams versus the best.
I think there's something
English
in between, I think, where we are now and what we used to be that would be more palatable than what we have, I think.
Do you? Because you talk through it, it's changed its format many different times.
It has. I think the big problem that they have in European football is the Europa League, which is a thing that doesn't make any sense at all. Because you have to play 18 games, you have to play half a season to win it, and a team like Burnley, they finished seventh last season.
Yeah.
This is the prize. This is your prize for finishing seventh. 18 more games to win a thing you don't care about, and they couldn't get out of it quickly enough. They couldn't get out of it quickly enough. And you look at. When Arsenal, typically Arsenal are in the Europa League, aren't they? Arsenal are the Thursday night European experience. And for years, Wenger's been putting, blokes you've seen for the first time, like it's the League Cup or something, and trying to just win or not really that bothered. And if that's the prize, what's the point of it? What's the point of it? If it's actually going to be better for you next season, not to finish 8th rather than 7th, and not be in the Europa League because you're going to finish ahead of Burnley, who are tied up with all this. And look at where Burnley are now. Burnley are only just finding their feet again after it just messed up the first half of their season. Yeah,
and it starts so early. I so enjoyed reading this chapter in your book. It made me the way you write about it is it's such a mess. Like you talk about the lower divisions, it's such a mess the way they've organised Europe. They keep trying, don't they? And you're right. You get 7th, you don't want it.
You don't want it. The thing that before they started the Europa League, they had a plan mind-boggling plan, because in the old days there used to be the European Cup for the champions and the holders, so you'd sometimes have two teams from the same country, but only when Forest won they played Liverpool, blah blah blah. But then there'd be the Cup Winners' Cup for the winners of the Cup, and then there'd be the UEFA Cup for the teams that were second, third, fourth, blah blah. And so that had a bit of status because those were the top end teams, and there weren't nearly as many games and blah blah blah. When they first reorganised it, what they wanted to do was expand the Cup Winners' Cup. Now, how are you going to do that? You've already got all the winners of all the cups. Who are you going to let in? Is it going to be, it's the Cup Winners and the Runners-Up Cup? And what if the Runners-Up's in the European Cup? So it's the Cup Winners and one of the semi-finalists' Cup. Yeah. How are you going to expand this thing?
Yeah.
You can't. But they tried to do it. That was a plan. That was a plan before the Europa League. And the Europa League is the better idea that they came up with.
Yeah. And you also forget, which is amazing, is the different rules with all the foreigners which we had. So at one stage you were only allowed to play so many overseas players.
Yeah.
So United were having to drop Schmeichel for matches and various different things.
And it's a little bit unfair, isn't it? That just because the story is they dropped Peter Schmeichel and played Gary Walsh. Yeah. And so they lost 4-0. Poor old Gary Walsh. Gary Walsh was a decent goalkeeper.
Right, yeah.
And they wouldn't have let 4 goals in if the defence had been playing better.
Yeah.
It's not his fault. Do you know what I mean? But that all changed with the on the back of the Bosman thing, because the Bosman thing was to do with the sort of freedom of movement and the restraint of trade rules of the European Community. And once those kicked in, then the Champions League couldn't. After Bosman in 95, I think it was. So 94, that was the Schmeichel thing, was 94. In 95, they were allowed then. They couldn't put a quota on the number of foreign players in a team. It wasn't allowed because of employment rules, EC employment rules.
Yeah.
And the other thing with the Bosman thing was the freedom of contract that came as a result of that, which meant that overnight, all this money that's washing around the game is suddenly going out to players because they've got all the power now. The players have more. It used to be the clubs that would hold their registration, and this is what happened to Bosman. The club his club didn't want to transfer him, so they held on to his registration. So they owned him he called it transfer slavery, is what Bosman called it. So they owned his registration, and the player was an asset, and it was on the books as an asset. and they declared that system illegal, and they never replaced it with anything that works. And so now there's all these millions in the game, and they're all going out to the footballers. You know, they're paying Sanchez something like $500,000 a week or something.
Amazing, isn't it? What happens when Brexit happens? Does this all change?
Yeah, I think it does. I think because there's two rules in play at the moment for footballers in this country. One is the freedom. The EC players have freedom of movement to work here. That you can't have a quota on them. Because it's a restraint of professional trade. But outside the EC, the EU. What is it called now? The EU, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'll learn this just before we get out of it. the European, outside the European Union, different rules apply. You to get a work permit from South America or from the Caribbean or blah 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 or Asia, you need to have a certain status. The player has to have a certain status. Has to have played a certain number of international games, or I think he has to be being brought in for a transfer fee that is above the median transfer fee of the in the competition he's going to play in. So, if when we come out of the union, and football clubs are very anxious about this at the moment because they don't know whether they're going to be able to carry on the way that they have been doing. Milking teenagers from abroad and then flogging them off to Belgian clubs and never playing them in the first team.
You're talking about Chelsea again, aren't you?
Always. Yeah. I'm talking about Chelsea. I'm talking about bloody Vitesse Arnhem. You know, but yeah. So after Brexit, if the rule that currently applies to the rest of the world starts to apply to the European Union, then there's a whole lower level of foreign player that won't be able to qualify to play here, because they'll only be able to pick from a sort of an elite level up. So there won't be any foreign players in the lower divisions, I don't think, if that's what happens. And so consequently, it ought to be good news for anyone who wants to see young English players, young Scottish, Welsh and Irish players coming through and getting a chance to play. I don't know whether it will. They'll find a way for it not to. Yeah. But whether Brexit ought to work in favour of bringing on British players.
But they'll find a way around it, won't they? Do you think financial fair play, that's just a nonsense, isn't it?
Yeah,
everything's become a nonsense.
Yeah, well, there are apparently financial fair play rules, and apparently Manchester City, for example, at the top end, break them all the time, and then they fine them $300,000.
And we all end up signing English goalies to stick in our squads to get round things, don't we? I mean,
well, if Brexit meant there'd be quotas on foreign players, I think that would be interesting.
Do you think that's a good thing? I can never work out what I feel about that, because I love the foreign imports so much, I vividly remember Ruud Gullit signing for Chelsea, going to watch him play and thinking, I cannot believe I'm watching Ruud Gullit play for Chelsea.
I think there is something, isn't there, about there's something gleeful about watching a world star play for you.
He was so good.
Going back from when Spurs signed Ardiles and Ricky Villa, who had just been in the '78 World Cup, and that was mind-boggling to see that. Less mind-boggling to see some of the also Rans who come along. And what would happen post Brexit is the star players would still qualify to come.
Right.
But the sort of lower level squad fillers wouldn't be able to come. And the ones that are currently playing at Oldham wouldn't be able to come.
Do you not like them?
I like them well enough, but Oldham are not currently owned by a Russian oligarch or a Sheikh Mansour. They're owned by a Moroccan former football agent, and he's made his brother the sporting director, and he can't get a manager at the moment because the two of them want to pick the team. And whenever there's a transfer coming in, it's coming in from a French fourth division side although I think they're called the Deuxième Division. But obscure French players come, which on the Oldham forum it's always #French lads.
Right. Okay.
And some of them are good, And we've got a guy called Javaro Nepomukino, who's an international. He's got many caps for Curaçao,
nice,
the giants of world football. And I think after Brexit, I think it's going to be more difficult for the French ones to come in, because the French fourth division players won't meet the standard to get a work permit.
Yeah.
Whereas, Jeroen Gullit would meet the standard.
We're all very accepting, aren't we? Like, that situation at Oldham makes you feel like no Oldham fan's going to turn up. Yeah,
hardly any of them do.
No way. But as football fans, I always find it quite... another thing I find quite... Are we going to look back and look at Roman Abramovich and go, really? Did we really want... I mean, look, I don't know enough about his history and his politics, but a few people have told me it's not the cleanest of things.
No, I mean, you've got some old associations there.
And then you've got, we've got all these different owners, and some of them aren't the most wholesome of people, maybe, or their business dealings. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So we've got all that going on, and then will we look back and say we sort of sold our football out a bit to this? Do you think we're going to be happy with it, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's difficult to see how football goes back to a time when that wasn't the case, because there's so much money in it, in the TV deals. There's so much money that money attracts money. Money attracts those people, and the sort of people who are very rich and prepared to take an idiotic punt on something like a football club. They tend maybe not to be the most straightforward of financiers, and not necessarily dodgy, but maybe ones who are prepared to take a more extreme risk than some others, And so I think that there's so much money in the game now that it's only going to attract more people to make more money out of it.
It's all part of the rich tapestry, I suppose, and the soap that is football. Yeah. And I mean, it gives a reason for everyone to hate Chelsea, and now Man City, I suppose. They're going to end up being the team that, at the moment, people quite like them because Pep's playing great football, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think he's had his honeymoon, I think. Yeah, as far as Man City is concerned.
It'll change. I suppose, though, the other side of it, being a football fan, I'm intrigued by the fact that when you read your book, you take apart FIFA and Sepp Blatter well, and I enjoyed that a lot. And I've always sort of thought it was strange when we sent David Beckham, Cameron, and Prince William to try and beg for the World Cup. And
we had such a half-assed attempt, didn't we?
But it was just like, why are we begging for a World Cup? Surely you put a document in place and that's it. You don't then go and wine and dine them all. But no, that is what you have to do. You have to wine and dine. I was like, well, why don't we pull out? Because it's ridiculous. And we're British and we're good people of the world, and yet we're still going to go to Russia and play in the World Cup, and we're still going to go to Qatar. I mean, surely as a country we should be thinking we need to pull out of Qatar, because that was got in a bad way, and also the human rights and also the treatment of everyone making the statements up. We're looking at it going, this we shouldn't be taking. We're still going to turn up, aren't we?
Oh, we'll still turn up. Yeah.
Why?
Because I don't know. I mean, I think the political cost of pulling out of pulling England out of the World Cup will destroy whoever does it. I think Thatcher wanted to pull us out of something, didn't she? Didn't Thatcher want to pull us out of the Olympics one time and was told the one that the USA didn't go to?
I'm not sure.
And was told, if you do this, wave goodbye to the next election. Because people love sport. It's a big captive audience, and people love sport, and people football fans like me measure our lives in World Cups. These are stupendously important things.
And Russia, which I thought, well, maybe we shouldn't be going, actually turned out to be brilliant, didn't it?
It did turn out to be brilliant.
So good. Yeah. The atmosphere was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, partly, of course, because all the hooligans who were going to threaten to make it were giving it all the abuse the year before, saying they were going to make it into a war zone, and we're going to take out the English fans and all this. They'd all gone. Where had they gone? And Putin can do that. You couldn't do that if we had the World Cup here.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
We don't have access to Siberia.
Yeah,
and they just clean it up. It was the same with the Olympics in Beijing that time. It's like a picture book Olympics, because if you've got a dictator in charge, he can sweep everything else under the carpet.
And I suppose football's the most popular sport in the world, isn't it? And it's played by a ridiculous number of teams enter the World Cup, 192 or something, is it? Something like that. Enter the World Cup. I suppose it's a way of the world coming together, even if it is under...
Yeah, it is. It's a way of the world to come together and hate each other openly.
That's not what I was thinking, but there you go.
Well, that was what you're suggesting is the thinking behind Sepp Blatter's bid for the Nobel Peace Prize, isn't it? That he personally was responsible for bringing the world together, since he happened to have lucked into or swindled his way into the top seat at FIFA.
Don't you feel we should pull away from FIFA though? Like, shouldn't we get Germany, ask Germany, Italy, Brazil, a few of the World Cup winners, and say, come on, we're going to go and find something better.
Have a Premier League of
say we're still going to do it, but we're just going to get rid of. I mean, FIFA's got so much baggage now, don't you think?
It has, yeah.
And we're not getting. It's not changing. It doesn't seem.
No, I don't think it's changing. No, not at all. They've got a different mini Blatter in charge. And the thing that the really disgraceful thing that Sepp Blatter did was make the Russia and Qatar thing happen at the same time, so that he could get all the kickbacks in before he either retired or died. He wanted, so he brought that whole thing forward. So we did the Qatar thing, the process for Qatar, so much earlier, so that he could get all the money from Qatar. And now last year they brought the 2026 bid forward. Infantino did, because FIFA's broke. He said, we need to do it now because FIFA's broke.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, all the money's gone in the pockets of the guys under the blankets into the police cars in Switzerland.
Yeah. There's so much to talk about in your book. There's one more thing I want to cover before we call it a day, is contact. Because to me it's the big thing that's changed dramatically in I liked it when Tony Adams or whoever was making a tackle, and they would do that sign with the ball. That was. I've got the ball. I've got the ball.
And then he'd go to the referee and say, "You're a cheat."
But someone like that, they would go in, make the sliding tackle. Whoever it was, Batty or those midfield guys.
That sort of bony splat. Yeah. When two men came together, and then both dusted themselves down and got up. It's not a particularly idyllic view of old football, I don't think. I think it has been. That's how it should still be. It's been softened ridiculously.
Yeah.
But the part of the reason for that is that there's this everything comes back to this. There's so much money in the game now that. And you're paying Alexis Sanchez, if you're Manchester United, you're paying Alexis Sanchez £500,000 a week, and they're not playing him. But if Alexis Sanchez was in the team, and if he got taken out by a Tony Adams or by I don't know who it would even be now, and he's sidelined for a month, you're paying that guy £2 million, and so the pressure from above is all you've got to protect these prima donnas, these fancy dans. You've got to protect them.
Fancy dans. Yeah, I suppose I remember Sir Alex. He put a lot of pressure, Alex Ferguson, on referees, and he would say before a match, we need to protect, especially Ronaldo. Yeah. We need those players protected, and he kept saying we need them protected. Yeah. So anyone came anywhere near Ronaldo, he would then do this thing where he'd stand off the ball and just put his arms out. Yeah. And then the ref would go and start. They started, especially at Old Trafford, they would start blowing and the whistle and everything.
But the pressure also comes from the people who own the clubs.
Yeah.
On the behind the scenes on the authorities to soften those rules and it's hard watching the pundits on Match of the Day buying into that stuff. Watching Shearer, for instance, buying into that stuff.
Yeah,
when you're asking Alan Shearer to watch a forward going into the penalty area with the ball, and someone tugs his shorts or something, and down he goes, as if Alan Shearer himself would ever have done.
Yeah,
I know. I think right in there. The
Yeah, you
idea
do,
that
yeah.
you know, Alan Shearer running into the penalty area with the ball, you're only going to stop him with a truck.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But now, you know, just last night, when someone put their hand on Lingard's shoulder and down he's gone. You know.
Yeah.
And
if you get touched, you have the right to go down.
yeah, but
no, you
and
don't.
this is Shearer talking.
No,
He
you
had
don't.
contact, so he's got every right to go down. And you think, but if you're thinking, oh, I've got a bit of contact, now I'll go down, you're cheating, aren't you? That's
Yeah.
cheating.
And it's not fair on the fans. That's what I always say, because we're I think what the clubs have forgotten sometimes, or the players or whoever, is that we've paid our money. We want to go and we want to see competitive football. We want to see challenges. Some of them are horrific, you know, the Roy Keane one and Haaland stuff like that. We don't want to see that. You know,
No, at the top end, you don't want to see that. But you know, you're still going to see personal animosity rise to the surface every now and again.
Yeah.
And you're still going to see people taken out. It's just, it's a thing where the game has softened to such an extent, and it's because of pressure. It's because of pressure from the people who are paying enormous wages and the people who have enormous financial stake in it, putting pressure on to protect their assets. You know, to protect them.
Yeah, you've got the right to go down is just the worst thing anyone ever says.
It's obscene, I think.
There's some great footage of original Ronaldo, and it's just a thing of beauty watching him ride tackles to try and score a goal.
Yeah.
So they're coming in, they're diving in, and it's like, you know, one of those people who put compilations of his goals together. Yeah. And then towards the end of his career, he has the right to go down. So you start seeing him go down. Yeah. And it's just, you're missing that beauty of Maradona or George Best or sound like an old git here, I know. But those guys who had to ride the tackles, they were flying in and the game wasn't going to stop.
Yeah. I mean, I loathe Maradona with a vengeance, but you think about the second goal that he scored in that Argentina game, where he went through and Fenech tried to stiff arm him on the edge of the box.
Yeah.
And he went through it. And they were coming in from either side trying to bring him down. And nowadays, a player like that gets into the area and contact and he's down. Yeah. And I'll take the penalty, where Maradona went all the way until and got the goal. And that was football 30 years ago.
Yeah.
32 years
and then you witness someone like Didier Drogba, who played for Chelsea. That was his whole, what a most incredible footballer. But so frustrating, his whole game was go down, constantly go down, break up the play.
But such a strong man as well, such a strong player.
And he just break up the play constantly, and I'm going, I know I paid my money. I want to see football. Stop going down all the bloody time. It's driving me nuts. It really did.
It is. It's a thing that's really diluted the enjoyment of the experience.
Well, Ian Rush said to me once, he said, you used to get a ball, and it was a great name drop that, wasn't it? Ian Rush. Ian Rush said to me once.
Ian Rush, the Liverpool footballer.
That's the one, I played for Wales and went to, where did he go? Juventus,
didn't he? Like living in a foreign country.
Yeah, he did, He's such a nice bloke, Ian Rush. I love him. He's brilliant. And he said to me, the thing is, when you got a ball years ago, you had like two or three choices. You either took it on, you passed it, or you got wiped out. That was your choice, right? So you moved the ball quickly because you had to make your decision quickly, and that was it. He goes, these days, and it had just been after Man City had signed, is it Robinho was the player, and he'd done that great thing on TV. Well, I say great, but it was sort of iconic. He'd done about 10 step overs without the ball moving, and the defenders just stood there watching him, and it's like, oh Christ, what is going on here? Do you know what I mean? Take him out, take the ball, get it out.
No, Cristiano Ronaldo used to do that, didn't he? When he was first at United, he'd come to the edge of the area and the fullback in front, and then he'd go over it, and you'd sit there watching and think, what is the point of you, really? But I just remember talking about being taken out as a way of life for a footballer.
Yeah.
You read in Stanley Matthews' autobiography when Stanley Matthews was the first to wear really light football boots, because they would be like house bricks, with studs nailed in, and the defenders would all be wearing these, and Matthews tried these really. And had them made specially, these very light football boots. And his teammates were saying, you can't wear those. There's no protection for they used to come up at the ankles and things to protect your ankles from a sliding tackle. Yeah. And you can't wear those. They're not safe. They're just going to kick you. And Matthew said they have to catch me first. Yeah. And he never got injured in those because they couldn't get close enough to him.
Right.
And there's something about that mindset. That's what old football used to be. It used to be, they're going to try and stop me and I'm going to beat them. Not they're going to try and stop me and I'll feel some contact and I'll go down.
It was great when I did Soccer I don't know if you know the show I did. You didn't mention it on your book.
Yeah, I always thought it was more a music show than a football show.
Anyway, when I did that, we had Peter Osgood on, Chelsea legend. And what I loved about it, Nike Skin had just come out. There were these lightweight boots, Nike Skin. And all the old pros, we used to get the old pros on all the time and just have a chat with them. It was great hearing the old stories and stuff. But they'd always go better in my day. And he looked at these boots and he went, Christ, I wish I'd played in those. Look at them, they're amazing. And I loved him for that, because he was sitting there, he was standing there thinking, Christ, I'd have scored more goals in these, rather than those old boots that they used to. I mean, he played in modern boots, but modernish boots, but
but they've come on and come on.
Yeah, they've come on. So it's a massive. The other thing I like about contact though is there's still this unwritten rule in football where if you're down to the last 2 or 3 minutes, you're in a cup game or a league game, whatever, and you're winning, and you take the ball to the corner flag, the defenders are still allowed to do whatever they want to you. They're not going to get. But you're still allowed to tackle from behind, slide tackle. You'll have to do whatever because the ref goes, it's your fault. You took it to the corner flag.
There was one of those, wasn't there, in the game on Tuesday night where City playing Newcastle. Newcastle 2-1 up, and Newcastle had the ball in the corner, and the shot was quite close in.
Right.
I don't know which players these were, but it was a Newcastle player, the corner flag, the linesman, 2 defenders here, and in this tight shot, a Manchester City player flew across, like way above, and you thought, what were you trying to do? But he just went right across the shot and out the other side.
Yeah,
and like it was just, I'm going to intimidate him into kicking out for a goal kick. Or what are you going to do? You're nowhere near the bloody ball.
Yeah,
if you land on him, it's definitely a free kick.
Did you play football?
I still play football.
Do you? You still play?
Yeah. You see how surprised you sound?
Well, I can't, because every time I play, I pull something. I had to give up.
That's a good reason for playing, isn't it?
Oh yeah, well, yeah. But
I still play. I have a game of people that I've organised for years and years and years, and a lot of us in our 50s and still going. And we were down at Battersea Park waiting to start, and we were waiting for others to come, kind of thing, and standing around talking. And a guy came in from the park into the Astro pitch where we play, and he said, "Are you that walking football?" I've seen it on the news, and suddenly we were fantastically offended by that, and we said, "No, fuck off." And then I look round, and all my friends here, half a dozen of us, we all just look like Santa. You should come and play. We all had these white beards, and all. Yeah, we look like walking football. Fair enough. Sorry.
Well, the point I was going to make is, when I play football, I love tackling. It was just part of the game. It was so enjoyable. 50-50, get stuck in. I don't know. I don't think they're enjoying themselves as much, because it's nice to be it's nice to tackle, and it's nice to be tackled as well. It's nice when you get wiped out and you think, oh God, I should have got rid of the ball.
My
or
fault.
whatever.
Yeah.
And it was part of the game.
Yeah, and it's part also of the thing that's crept into the game over the last sort of 10, 20 years, of really prizing the possession statistic.
Yeah.
And now the game is all about keeping the ball, and so what they're trying to do is keep it away from the tackle, and so the way that people mostly defend now is pressing and standing off, not really tackling, threatening to tackle, and then coming off again, trying to force the team back, trying to force them to make a mistake that will give you possession. So then you're watching things like, you're watching Manchester City with possession for 40, 50 passes. No one's coming close enough to take the ball. They're trying to do this fake press, which pushes them back, but they're not going to dive in. They're not endangering the possession at all. They're allowing it to happen, and you watch this stalemate, for minutes on end.
Alonso played for Liverpool and Madrid. Famously said, "If you're tackling in a game, something's gone wrong." I mean, what the hell are you talking about? Yeah. But that's where it's got to.
Something went wrong there, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I want to see the tackles. So I think
I agree.
I think that's the one thing in the game that we need to get back in somehow. But if I say that, it's you know what else you mentioned in your book? You're right for time at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. Is it some more old man stuff?
Yeah, no, it's the thing that I like, the fact you brought up in your book, Tiki-Taka, because I remember watching Tiki-Taka thinking, I'm so bored of this football. and I used to go to everyone. I'm bored, and the Guardian sports writers and everybody else would all be going, "Oh my God, it's so beautiful watching this. People pass up their asses," and then and I'd be going, "Oh Christ." And it's like purest football. It's and I love Klopp for saying that's classical music. I like heavy metal. I loved him for that thing. Yeah. But then what was great was we watched the World Cup where Spain won with and you mentioned it in your book, the lowest amount of goals ever.
Yes.
But also they had the lowest amount of shots of anyone who's ever won the World Cup.
Yes.
Holland decide, well, we can't get the ball off them, so we'll just play proper football and go and hack them and go in. And everybody went anti-football. It's like, unless you play by our rules, which is basically just stand around while we pass the ball around. We're going to score one goal if we're lucky, if you're lucky.
Well, the ideal, isn't it? The ideal is to keep the ball for 90 minutes, have one chance, score one goal, job done.
Yeah.
And that's anti-entertainment, I think.
Yes,
is what that is.
Yes. But that phrase which was suddenly coined, anti-football, if you went, I'm not enjoying it. Yeah. I'm not enjoying watching that.
Or if, it was De Jong, was it, who went in with his studs on the Spanish player.
Yeah.
It's like he was just saying what we were all thinking.
Well, I was going, this is brilliant, and everyone was going, I remember watching it around a friend's house, and they were going, it's anti-football. I'm like, no, it's not. He's trying to get the bloody ball. I'm enjoying it. He didn't get sent off. He should have gone, but
there's something joyful about I think I mentioned in there, the game where Celtic beat Barcelona, and they had 16% of the possession.
Yeah, that's right.
And Barcelona beat them 2-1. They had 2 shots.
But it was so refreshing for all the people who wrote so many. I mean, all the fans and everyone else who sort of just went on and on about this possession football, which it started off being total football by Cruyff,
Yes,
which is what you point out in your book,
that's
and then it ended up with.
And then he was the one who started the possession thing at Barcelona, but it was Guardiola who raised it up to the peak level.
But Guardiola's football's nice to watch, but the version which happened eventually in Spain and they didn't have Messi playing for them as well, did they? So which was a problem. But it's like it just became, let's keep hold of the ball so you don't score. Yes. Yes. And it became quite a hard thing to watch.
It's hard to watch.
But then when you see Leicester suddenly win the league with that attacking football where they're just hurtling up the pitch, it suddenly was like, yes, football's back, how we remember it.
Yeah. Well, in order for them to do that as well, they were a counter-attacking team, weren't they?
Yeah.
In order to do that, they had a style which allowed the other team to have the ball, which allowed the other team to play that possession game, because ultimately it's pointless unless you make it into goals.
Well, I think Chelsea came unstuck. We're going to get too much detail here, but I think Chelsea came unstuck that season. We were still trying to play possessionist stuff, and then all the teams just getting the ball and hurtling at us. We were on the back foot all the time. Final thing about football, I remember, because I just thought this would quite interest you, that there was a time when football was about teams, and I remember during the time that I was presenting, producing and writing Soccer, a show you've probably heard of. Chris.
Yeah, that's right. It was like Top of the Pops, wasn't it?
That's it, That's it. There was a time where it stopped becoming about the team and became about the individual. And I remember someone writing to me and saying they'd worked for one of the big companies, one of the sport, I think it was Puma or something, and said they'd actually sat in a meeting when they said the team is dead, it's about the individual. That's how they're selling it. Now, obviously, it worked very well with Nike and Michael Jordan and all the...
and the advert where he's doing the keepy up, he's on the escalator at that time with the... original Ronaldo.
Yeah, and then Beckham, what a great place to put money if you're Adidas and all that sort of stuff. And it did change, and then I think TV reflected it when they started going, it's Ronaldo versus Messi, or it suddenly became one player versus another.
And they do it with managers as well. It's like it's a managerial head-to-head, and I don't care about that. I don't care if Claude Puel has a bad day.
Yeah. All right, final thing. Are you looking forward to... Do you think the fans been left behind? Are you looking forward to the future?
Do I think the fans have been left behind? I think more and more people will find football dispensable because there's so much of it. That's my fear, I think. I mean, I'm quite happy that there's a lot of football because I watch a lot of football, because it fills what is in my life a much needed gap. But I worry that football is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then and that it will just not be able to sustain itself at the ridiculous levels that it's at, financially, that it'll just not sustain itself.
Your book made me love football a bit more.
Oh, good.
I've got to be honest with you, because it's all the things that I think, and I was like, excellent. There's somebody else who's thinking that. Not that everyone's thinking it, but it's like it's humorous, it's fun, but also I like what it reminded me is I like the soap of it all. The idea we can have this conversation, and I think if I try to have this conversation on Twitter, it'll be rent boy wanker or whatever. It's like it ends up being that level.
I always get that.
No, but it ends up being that level, which is what we and it's nice to. This is what's good, is having a lovely conversation about football and where it's going and what's happening, and you just have to pick and choose where you have those conversations. I guess. Exactly right. But I seriously recommend the book to anybody. I'm going to see what happened with our poll to see if anyone bothered taking part. Actually, I'm not sure whether. Oh, here we go. Okay. Recording Dear Lovejoy podcast with Chris England. What's more important? Club, country, don't care were the options. Club won with 63%. Country 22%, and don't care 15%. So,
well, there you are.
Club is more important according to the people who follow me. There's questions I ask everybody. So I will ask you at the same time if I can find them. What one piece of advice is invaluable to your life?
Piece of advice invaluable to my life. I mean, I would say you just have to enjoy what you have when you have it, because you won't always have it. And I've had a particularly bad year last year where I lost some important people, and now I'm thinking you just have to, enjoy what you have while you have it. That would be the main
important
thing.
Yeah, very important. What's the biggest mistake you've made?
The biggest mistake I've made. Well, I was talking to Mark earlier on, and he suggested we could maybe have a World Cup format for my mistakes. So we'll start with the round of 16. No, I mean, I think that the big train wreck mistake that I made in my professional life was going into, without going into detail, going into a professional business relationship with someone who was a friend and not taking a lawyer with me.
Oh.
So that's a thing to. That's a thing to watch out.
I had a conversation about that. I'm not going to say who, so this is a pointless conversation, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah, right.
But someone who went into a relationship with someone very similar, and the other person took their idea and made it into one of the biggest things.
Oh, no.
And that's going to frustrate everyone listening to this now,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Want to know what that is.
Because they want to, I'll tell you off air.
Yeah, okay, cool.
By the way, I've got to point out, you and Mark are friends, and you work together and write together, don't you?
We do, yes.
You write comedy together. And,
we do write comedy.
have you got? What are you writing? Not with Mark, but what else are you writing at the moment?
At the moment, I'm writing with Mark. Yeah,
just Mark.
Yeah,
Are you doing any more books or anything at the moment?
I have written other books which are novels. I've written 3 novels, which was a trilogy which is complete now.
Right.
About the early life of Charlie Chaplin, Stan Laurel, Oliver Hardy when they were starting out, kind of thing.
Oh, cool.
And that occupied me for about 7-8 years, and took all my brain space.
Right.
So I'm kind of waiting for another thing that's going to come along and take me off onto another book, a fiction thing. I've got a couple of ideas, but they're not ready to do yet.
Was Oliver Hardy from London or from England?
No, from Georgia.
Stan Laurel.
Laurel was from Cumbria.
That's right.
Yeah.
So,
Stan Laurel's English, yeah.
And so was Charlie Chaplin.
Charlie Chaplin's from London, yes, from Kennington.
How did they end up in America being silent movie heroes?
Well, what you need to do is read more.
What's it called?
I've written 3. One is called The Fun Factory,
yeah,
which is about the Fun Factory in Camberwell in South London, which was the headquarters of Fred Carno, who's a comedy genius entrepreneur of the pre-First World War years. And lots of people started their careers there. He ran 10, 12 companies, toured the country in music halls, doing big production things within a music hall bill. So there'd be a huge spectacle thing. And as an 18-year-old, Charlie Chaplin his brother worked there first. Sid Chaplin worked for Carno, got his brother a job. So Chaplin learnt his trade in the Fun Factory, and this is the first book, and they met Stan Laurel there. Then Carno toured companies all over America in American vaudeville. It was quite a common, to travel across the Atlantic and tour the States. So in the second book, which is called The Boxcar of Fun, it's about them travelling on trains mostly from venue to venue across America. And Stan Laurel was Charlie Chaplin's understudy when, Chaplin was 19 and Stan Laurel was 17. And it's a sort of a little known and little covered part of their careers. Particularly because Stan Laurel never was vain enough to write an autobiography, and Charlie Chaplin's autobiography doesn't mention Stan Laurel at all.
Wow.
Not at all, which is what made me write the book in the first place. I was interested in it because I knew that they'd lived in each other's pockets for 4 or 5 years, and Laurel was his understudy and was the only person really that Chaplin regarded as a proper rival. And so he did whatever he could to keep him under his thumb.
Right.
Kind of thing. And so that the second book covers a period when they're touring American vaudeville, and at the end of that, Chaplin gets offered to go into silent movies, and then the third book is silent movies. Is called Chaplinoia.
Right. Have you seen the film, the one with Steve Coogan?
Yeah.
And
it's great.
You
It's
like
really
it?
great. Yeah. It's not treading on my toes at all. It's the far end of their careers. Laurel and Hardy. It's set in 1953, just before Hardy was too ill to carry on.
And Stan Laurel, was he the genius writer behind the two of them?
That's right, yeah. And Hardy would let him have his own way and go and play golf. Stan Laurel would stay up all night editing the films, and he was the gag man.
Right.
And what interested me about Stan Laurel and Charlie Chaplin's relationship was that Charlie Chaplin was a couple of years older. Stan Laurel was his understudy.
Yeah.
Charlie Chaplin went to silent movies and became the biggest star in the world in about 7-8 months from starting in silent movies.
My God.
And Stan Laurel wasn't, and they're looking back, they're almost equivalent, aren't they?
Yeah.
In terms of their profile, in terms of how they're thought of. But Stan Laurel didn't make a film with Oliver Hardy for another 13, 14 years. And he was, when he was put together with Oliver Hardy, he'd had a go at being a solo film comedian. It hadn't worked, partly because in the early days he had very pale eyes and they completely washed out in the early film stock, and he looked odd. He looked like a ghost. And so when the film became more sophisticated, you could actually see his facial features. But by the time he met Oliver Hardy, he was working as a gag man for other comedians, and a director and a producer, and had almost given up on a film career of his own, and had to live for 14 years, let's say, with his big rival, the guy he was the understudy of, being the most famous man in the world for 14 years.
Wow.
And that was what drew me to that story. And so, I heartily recommend the Steve Coogan film. I think John C. Reilly is fantastic.
He is, yeah.
There's a fantastic Oliver Hardy, and really touching as well.
Yeah. No, I thoroughly enjoyed the film. I knew so little about them, and it was kind of interesting to see it.
Well, not a lot of people would know that chapter, really, of their... Because that was after they'd finished. The story of the film involves them trying to make it one last film, but they never made another film from that point. And so that's not really covered in many things. There's one very good book about their stage tours, which I think they've used stories from in the film.
Any life hacks?
Life hacks. Well, not really for me, because I'm not really very useful at anything. But there's one thing that I will offer you. My son, my middle son, John, who's now a very smart student at Sheffield University, but when he was a kid, he came up and asked me something, and I'm not sure, I can't quite remember what it was. He came up and asked me something about how the world worked or how the house worked or something. Like you were saying a little earlier about your daughter asking you where water comes from.
Yeah, my daughter, she's 5 years old. She says, where does the water come from? I was like,
and you said, don't touch that, it's 100 degrees.
By cooker, spelled cooker.
But exactly. But so it was a question like that. And I was humming and hawing and stumbling around. So I don't know. Well, this and that, and he stopped me. And he's a little kid, he's 6 or 7. He stopped me. He went, "Never mind, The Simpsons will teach me." And I think that's a great life hack, particularly if you're a comedy writer. If anything you think of, The Simpsons have nailed it. That's the thing. Look at The Simpsons; they'll show you how to do stuff.
Can you recommend a book?
One that's not my own. Yes.
Yeah. Go on.
Yeah. Well, my favourite book, the book that I read and reread, is called The Right Stuff. It's by Tom Wolfe, and it's about the Mercury astronauts of the 1960s, and it's like a cross between journalism and a novel, and it's like it almost makes its own genre. Because it's the stories of John Glenn, Alan Shepard. They made a film of it, of John Glenn, Alan Shepard, and those 7 astronauts: Slayton, Carpenter, Schirra, Cooper. But it's done. It's done as though they're fictional, as though they're novel characters that he's made up. So he's in their heads, and it's really well done, and it's really riveting.
And when you watch the film of it, are you thinking, I could have written that better?
No.
Okay.
No, I like the film of it. The film of it is nice. If you see the film without reading the book, it's a little bit strange. There are parts in it where you think, what's that? What's that doing there? Because alongside the astronaut story is the story of Chuck Yeager, who was the man who broke the sound barrier, and he's in the book because the book is about the right stuff. It's not about one person in particular story. It's about the right stuff. It's about the stuff that makes a test pilot get into a plane that's never been tested, or makes a man sit on top of a rocket that's always blown up in trials to be the first man in space. It's about the stuff. It's about what they're made of, these guys. And Chuck Yeager is like the king test pilot at the start. But he doesn't apply for the astronaut program, and when they approach him, he doesn't actually qualify for it because they've decided they have to be graduates or something, so it's some poncy thing. But he was the best, but he didn't get in he didn't want to get in the astronaut program. He didn't think it was pilot work. He described the Mercury shots as spam in a can.
Right, okay.
This is what all the astronauts are, just spam in a can.
Spam in a can.
And so if you see the film and you haven't read the book, then it's the Yeager stuff is a little bit odd because it doesn't seem to connect.
Fit.
But it connects kind of thematically.
What's the meaning of life? Final question.
Now you see, I don't really know the answer to that one. And if I did, I'd be writing that book, I think.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Chris.
It's been a
really
great
enjoyed
pleasure.
it. The book is called On the Game, 66 to 2018, How Football Became What Is Today. If you like football, even if you don't like football, I really recommend it. It's a little journey through.
Yeah, if you don't like
through
football,
those
there's
years.
an opportunity to vent.
It is. It gives you lots of reasons to hate it more.
Yeah.
But I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Good,
Thanks for doing it.
thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.